Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randall and Gus Kearns.
Welcome in, listeners, to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we're always talking everything college hoops. You could have been anywhere else on the dial, but you chose to be here with us, Mike and Gus, and we appreciate that decision. Mike, I don't know if we'll get to talk to the listeners before we get to the Day of Love, so happy Valentine's Day out there to everybody. I think we just need to dive right in. This is a big weekend. Tons of college basketball stuff went down this weekend. What did we learn from this past week of college hoops, and how are you doing? What's up over there?
We learned a ton. I'm extremely excited because Coppin State should never be favored by 10 against anyone. So that game just went final. Maryland Eastern Shore loses by 1 in overtime, but of course, we only care about the cover. 10 points, Coppin State. I don't know if Coppin State should give 10 against your daughter's team. I have to tell you.
Too much. By the way, my daughter's team was 2-0. This weekend, and she even won. She went to go play with the boys team, and she won that game as well. So overall, Gus's daughter 3-0 this weekend in fourth grade hoops, which is pretty exciting. Let's talk bracket preview show from Saturday. We were all kind of waiting for it. We all wanted to see what happened, and I think it's a great talking point for the sport, and it's the perfect timeline right after the Super Bowl, pre-Oscars. You got everything that you need pre-dog show. My girls love the dog show on Monday and Tuesday, the Westminster dog show. I was very disappointed the Otterhound didn't make the finals, for the game group. I was a little disappointed. He looked really strong.
Why wouldn't an Otterhound look strong? I would assume
Otterhound, webbed feet, and, one of the few dogs that has a waterproof coat. You know, that's amazing.
It's helpful when you walk it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, you don't have to put a raincoat on when it rains. It's amazing. So let's talk bracket preview show. Anything you have a problem with the number one seeds? Any beef with what you see or hear? And do you think that Duke Dayton could nab one of those number one seeds next to their name in March? What'd you take away from the bracket preview show? What do you think? The good, the bad, the ugly? Anything you had a problem with, and anything you really liked?
Well, I was thrilled because I feel like I had this one nailed better than I had it.
You were super close.
Any of the other ones. I got the top 9 teams right and in the right location, except for Gonzaga, San Diego State, which annoyed me because I should have.
That's fine. That's fine.
Just stupid because they're going to put Gonzaga in the West. I probably did a little too much. Oh, well, they're San Diego State's number 1 in the net, so they have to put them in. No, garbage. So yes, I was very excited. Love Baylor's the number 1. Kansas goes to the Midwest. Right. Gonzaga in the West, totally great. San Diego State in the East, and of course they put Duke there, which means San Diego State is basically going to have to put a road game in Madison Square Garden. I'm fine with that.
Tough at MSG, right?
Dayton goes to the Midwest, makes total sense because of competitive balance. I'm fine with that. Louisville to the South makes total sense. They had a lot of solid resume. They beat Duke. All that is great. West Virginia to the West, obviously really solid as well. They have to go out West with Gonzaga. What a game that would be to go to the Final Four. My goodness. A couple things I point out. I think they did a good job here. Number 1, I don't want to hear from the Louisville fans. Pipe down, Louisville fans. I know you beat Duke at Duke. I don't care. You only have 3 quadrant 1 wins. And Gus, the theme here has been big wins matter. Forget the net. Forget, adjusted offensive efficiency. Forget that. Strength of schedule. What matters to them, and I'm fine with it. Would I have done it this way? Probably not, but I wanted to try to do what I think they did. I thought there was a consistency there. They want the big wins. Quadrant 1 wins is what drives the bus. You gotta get them. So I'm fine with Duke ahead of Louisville, even though Louisville won at Duke. I have no problem with that. Maryland's gotta be number 9 overall. They were almost a 2. They have a great resume. They've had big wins. Turgeon got the monkey off his back. He wins on the road. Nice job by him. Really solid with that. Now, Florida State 10.
Hey, can I jump in for a second? Yep. Quick, real quick with this. Just because you mentioned Maryland and the big win. Do you think the win over Illinois on Friday night influenced that, or do you think that they were already slotted in at the 9 spot and the 3 seed? What do you think?
It's a great question. I think they did this as a true trial run, as they would do in March. So yes, I think it definitely got factored in. Do I think that they would have dropped below Florida State? Probably not. So I think they went from a 3 to a 3, almost a 2. I don't think it dropped them because I think they liked Maryland, and the comments after are very revealing. Florida State, I also got right in the Midwest. This is where it got frisky. Yep. I love Seton Hall to the south. I had them as a 4 because I did not know how they would value without Powell, without Sandro. I wasn't sure. The answer is they did value it, because if you take those things into account, Seton Hall is absolutely a top 3 seed, almost a 2 seed. Great job by them. I didn't like Villanova 12. At a 3 seed. I had them a little lower because of their losses. My issue with Villanova is that, listen, I think they've been solid, but I don't think they're worthy of a 3. If you look at Villanova's resume, they're 28th in KenPom. They're 17-6. I guess, well, they lost to Seton Hall. So coming in, they lost to Seton Hall on Saturday. They were 17-5. They lost to Creighton. They lost to Butler. They lost to Baylor. They lost to Ohio State. They lost to Marquette. A lot of losses. That's a lot of losses for a team that's going to be a 3 seed. And you want to talk about the big wins and what they've had. If I look at their overall profile, I kind of thought it felt a little short. They're 5-6 against Quad 1. So I guess before the game, they were 5-5 there. And their strength of schedule is 3. So I thought they should be a 4, and we'll get to the team I think should have been there in a minute. As far as the 4 seeds, Auburn, I probably would have put Auburn ahead of them, to be honest, and put Villanova below. I had Auburn as a 3. Oregon, I'm glad to see in. I think Oregon is the best team in the West. I don't care about the loss to Colorado. Colorado fans, you got to pipe down. I know that was a nice win at home, but I don't think they have enough big wins. Same thing that we're talking about with Louisville Duke. Butler had coming into the game, although it changed now because remember the Quad 1 wins change depending on where the team's ranked. So if a team drops below, let's say a top 30 team is not Quad 1 win.
Yeah, it's in flux.
It's in flux, right. So Butler was the only team besides Baylor and Kansas to have 8 Quad 1 wins, so I knew they'd get
Which is bananas.
The one I have a problem with is Michigan State. I can't put Michigan State in there. They're ranking them off of last year. 2-7.
Or preseason rankings. Either one, whichever one you want to choose.
Like Gus, tell me what puts them in here. Before the game that they lost at home, before this past weekend,
the Michigan game.
Yeah, coming into the Michigan game, here's what they had. They were 16-7. Their strength of schedule is 57. Their non-conference strength of schedule, odd for Michigan State, 77. And they were 2-6 against Quad 1 teams. Why are they in? They have less Quad 1 wins than Louisville. I think LSU gets the spot if it didn't lose to Vandy. So that's kind of justification.
I think that makes sense. Yeah. You could also argue Kentucky. You could also argue Penn State.
Yeah. I was talking with Jerry Palm. We're tweeting back and forth. You see the name drop I did right there, by the way, Jerry Palm.
Very nice.
We're going back and forth. Penn State should be in. Penn State just
Jerry Palm podcast guest.
Yeah, exactly right. Penn State just waxed Michigan State at Michigan State. They're going to say, well, Mike, you just said the head-to-head doesn't matter. Yeah, guys. Well, it matters if Penn State has 6 Quad 1 wins and Michigan State has 2. And they're 18-5, and Michigan State coming into that game was 16-7. So I guess they don't like Michigan State's non-conference schedule. Gus, 332nd. Penn State not really challenged themselves. But overall, man, I didn't like that he considered Iowa. They said, well, the guy said the 3 teams we considered are Kentucky, fine, LSU, fine, and Iowa. I'm going down the list here. Iowa? I'm scrolling.
Well, look at Iowa's Quad 1 wins.
They have 5. Okay, but they're 17.
So that puts them in the conversation.
Yeah, but I would have. I like Kentucky better, and I certainly like Penn State better. I like Iowa. I think Iowa's good. I would have put them in against Pirate State, like Palm said. Overall, I loved it. I'm into this stuff. Maybe nobody cares except for me. I like going in there. I think there was I think there was a consistency, Gus, and they executed very well.
Well, look, 2 things I'm going to say. Number one, just how your brain was working. I think your brain was a little bit in sync with the selection process. So I'd like to congratulate you on that. Cause you were pretty spot on with a couple things. And then number 2, this is why we want to have this show, because it provides a discourse and discussion for the sport that we love. Like, that's exactly what we want. And I think, according to your homework, Mike, I think you were kind of, you nailed a whole bunch of things. I don't know if anybody was going to be spot on. And as far as Michigan State, I think you're right. I think there's a little bit of, made the Final Four, preseason number 1 type, not necessarily bias, but maybe like an unconscious bias that they're kind of still hanging around. And I think you could have plugged a number of different teams in there, all of them all the teams that we just mentioned. Like you could have plugged any one of those other teams in there, and you know what? You could have argued just the same for them, and it would have made sense. It's not like it was a huge wart. They were a 4 seed. If they were a 3 seed, then we're getting somewhere where we can kind of, nitpick and get down and dirty with it. But I think they did overall a great job.
2 things I want to look at is, number one, my big question moving forward is Big East sent 11 teams out of 16 back in 2011. ACC has sent 9 out of their 15 a couple times. But people are talking about 10 to 12 teams from the 14-team Big Ten getting in. I have no interest in that whatsoever. Easy. I have no interest. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want a team that's, my rule. Got to be 500 in conference to get in over a strong mid-major. Now, if there's no strong mid-major, if there happens to be a year where there's not some great mid-majors, then maybe a team that's 1 below 500, a 7-9 team, things like that. The Syracuse rule, you want to call it. They always get in. But I don't want 2 games below 500 from big conferences in the tournament. I want to see what they're going to do with that.
I think if we're going to pick on one big conference for that particular problem, it's going to be the Big Ten. And if we're going to pick out a couple of other teams that we could fight that battle against, I mean, we can go Colgate. I mean, we could go Rhode Island. We could go East Tennessee State. Like there's a couple of other teams that we can hit on here where you can say like, oh, well, maybe this team needs to be in ahead of this sub 500 mid-major, a high major team, whether it be Big Ten or otherwise.
Right.
So yeah, I'm with you on that.
That's exactly right. That's a great example. Right. Don't give me a 6-10 Indiana team because they beat Michigan State over Rhode Island, who probably will have 2 or 3 losses and played great all year. That I don't want to have happen.
How about this? How about, are you going to pick that team over a Liberty team if they don't if they don't win their conference tournament?
Exactly. Hey, that's a great example. Yes.
Bingo bango. Yeah. Okay, there we go. All right, so Mike, I guess the last thing with the preview show, and then we'll tie a bow on that. I kind of enjoyed White and Gavitt being like real people on the broadcast and not just like polished TV people. I kind of enjoyed Sherry Palm predicting the rest of the bracket afterwards. That was kind of cool, useful, and promoted like even more thought, conversation, and focus on what will just be an amazing weekend for our sport and college hoops. So I kind of like the whole product. I like that it was in a half-hour thing. I don't think they need to stretch it out to an hour. I think if they stretch it out to an hour, that'd be a mistake. The half hour, put your 1 seeds there. Everybody can argue about that. Plug in the top 4s and then let Palm do his thing afterwards. I kind of like the whole thing. And I enjoyed like looking at all the brackets and seeing where everybody's head was at. And I thought they asked like some, legitimate questions, but not anything deep dive or heavy hitting or anything. They just like kind of laid it out there and said like, hey, this is what it looks like right now. And guess what? 5 weeks, 6 weeks from now, it can look completely different.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead with the weekend rundown. I'll bring it back here and we'll try to go over all the games that happened this weekend. This weekend was absolutely jammed with goodness, sweetness, love, and unbelievable college basketball. Our sport got center stage after the Super Bowl. I mean, I know the XFL was happening and that type of thing, and the Oscars were going on. Dog show tonight and tomorrow night. So there are a number of cool things that happened. And you know what? It kind of all started Friday night. Somehow, Harvard steals a win at Yale, 78-77 on Friday evening. Azir Swaim almost pulls a miracle with a potential 4-point play as time runs down. The junior guard is one of the finest shooters in the Ivy, and he went off for 33 points, hitting 5 threes. He had a chance to tie this game with Yale being down 4 with 4 seconds to go. He makes the 3, gets fouled on a broken scramble like play where it was poorly defended. Huzang Kirkwood played great, but Swain missed the free throw to send it into overtime. The weekend madness started here in the Ivy. Mike, thoughts on Yale, Harvard, and after seeing Harvard live, I'm kind of shocked by this result.
It shows me that the Ivy still goes through Harvard, especially with Yale. No Towns, no Aiken, no problem. Now, since Amaker got to Harvard in 2011, they've won the title 5 times in a row, starting in 2011. Then they got 4th, 2nd, and then they tied for 1st twice. They're 3-3, but they're lurking. Terrible job by Yale. You can't lose that game to an undermanned Harvard team if you want me to consider that you're legit. Harvard has now beat them 7 consecutive times in the regular season. And then, just to rub salt in the wounds with Yale, Harvard comes back and loses at Brown the next night.
Makes no sense.
Danilo Djuricic, I hope I'm saying that right, has 17 points on 3 or 4 from 3. At Brown, he has Zippo. He's their case shooter, and for some reason against Yale, he steps up. Terrible job by Yale. I'm done with you. Wake me when you beat Harvard. If you cannot beat Harvard, I'm not backing you in the NCAA tournament, guys. These are the people that prepare for you, and it's a disappointing loss. No Towns, no Aiken, no win, no bueno.
Maryland grabs a huge road win over Illinois, and we talked about this a little bit on the bracket preview show. After being down in the first half and looking the part of typical Terps, Coach Turge actually makes some awesome defensive halftime adjustments. Anthony Cowan checks all the boxes for what you want to do as an All-American. He has 20 points, 7 assists, 4 boards, 3 threes, only 2 turnovers on the road. And I'll tell you what, this Maryland team held Illinois to 24 second half points on the road. I think that's pretty impressive stuff, right, Mike? I mean, we've been waiting for this big win for Maryland on the road. This is one of those big wins we've been waiting for.
Great win for the Terps and an even bigger win for Turgeon, who's gotten a lot of grief here. Maryland's got 6 in a row. They're up to 8th overall in Ken Palm. They're at Sparty on Saturday, which would bury Michigan State in the Big Ten regular season title race if they somehow pulled that off. Sophomore forward Jalen Smith dominating, Gus. 6 consecutive double-doubles, 11 blocks in the 2 home games over Rutgers and Iowa. What does that even mean? In the Big Ten, which is the best basketball conference right now in the country, Ken Palm has agreed with it. Maryland is only allowing 43.5% from inside the arc. That is best in the conference.
Huge stat.
And 77.9%, basically 78% from the free throw line, which is second, and has helped them with those road wins at Northwestern, Indiana, and Illinois. Teams, by the way, Gus, they're shooting 73.2% from the free throw line against them, which is 12th in the Big Ten, which means that's a little unlucky that a team's making that many free throws. So they may be due for some even negative regression from their opponents at the free throw line. Great win for Maryland. Very impressed. Love to see it.
One of my neighbors is a Maryland graduate and is a big Terp fan, so shouts to Jay. It was pretty cool that he and his Maryland Terps got this big win on the road and then secured an unbelievable position in the bracket preview show. All right, let's hit Saturday, and if we're going to hit Saturday, there's no other place to start with Duke-UNC. This game was so ho-hum and under the radar rolling into it that it didn't have the usual buzz. I mean, Mike, this is a game that you, myself, Dr. Tony would get together and try to watch annually, whatever game it was, whether the first or second game, and just see if we could get together to spend some time so we could get our college basketball eyes on it and then talk about it and have some good dialogue. And this one just seemed like it was going to go under the bridge and be not a big deal. And lo and behold, it gave us one of the coolest games this season so far. Duke beats UNC 98-96 in overtime with 2 buzzer beaters by Duke to get the game to the victory column for the Blue Devils. Mike, I think we'll start with maybe, do you foul when you're up 3? Do you not foul when you're up 3? And then we can go from there. How about that?
I got an undergrad math degree and a graduate math degree. Don't come at me with math. I can give you regression. I can give you abstract linear algebra. I can do a chi-square distribution, turn it sideways, and shove it where the sun don't shine. Save me the math. The idea that you foul up 3 is idiotic. Stop. Here's why. First off, the offensive team knows you're going to foul. So with 6.1 seconds left, Trey Jones gets the ball. They're down 3. He can dribble like a complete maniac, knowing nothing's going to happen. He's not going to get trapped. They're going to foul him. Jay Billis, this sums it up, who's a huge fan of you foul. You foul, you foul. On the telecast, Jay Billis says, before it's inbounded, what you want to do is foul, ideally a little bit over half court, under 5 seconds. Trey Jones gets fouled right at half court, 4.4 seconds. What does Jay Billis say? Well, it's a little early. Okay, Jay, so under 5 seconds means what then? That's if you play it back, that's what he said. So now Trey Jones goes to the line and makes the first one. Why? He's a good free throw shooter. Okay, he's a good free throw shooter. Now, the second one. The whole purpose of fouling, Gus, is that you have inside position on the rebound. So all the North Carolina players, they get low, okay? They get down here with their arms out, their elbows in their hands. They're very low, okay? which, Gus, defeats the purpose of the inside position unless the ball drops directly down. What does Trey Jones do? He has his whole routine like your daughter does where she spins the ball. Trey Jones cuts that short. He just did it on the first free throw, so the Carolina players aren't even looking, and he fires it directly off the rim and gets it back. Well, that's really hard to do. No, it's not. Not when you're a Division I basketball player and you do it every day in practice. It's not hard. And once Trey Jones gets that rebound back, Gus, North Carolina's in panic mode. They're backing up. They don't know what to do. Do we foul? So you can be super aggressive. Somebody said to me on Twitter, there's think of all the things you have to do. You have to make the free throw. You have to miss the shot. You have to get the rebound, and you have to score. Really. That's like me saying, boy, I got a lot to do this morning. I got to wake up. I got to go to the bathroom. I got to put on my socks. I have to get a cup of coffee, and I have to breathe. Okay, but it's not that hard. Not when the defense is so passive like it is. I hate it, Gus. Krzyzewski out-coached Roy Williams. Terrible job. They don't show all the times when the guy takes the three and misses it. They just show the times it goes in. Guys, if he's a really good shooter, it's a 36% chance.
So here's my 2 cents on this. I think we saw what happened in the Clemson game with UNC, where they decided not to foul down 3. Clemson hits the 3. UNC ends up losing that game. That's the first game that Clemson beat UNC at UNC ever. So, of course, Roy Williams is going to go 180 degrees in the other direction and say, we gotta foul. We're up 3. We have to foul. So, of course, that's going to happen. And here's what else is in play as well. Sometimes when you have a season like North Carolina's having, and look, I picked them to go to the Final Four preseason. So I'll admit right now, I'm completely wrong on them. I thought Cole Anthony was going to have a bigger impact and stay healthy, obviously, but I thought they would mesh a little bit, keener and a little bit finer. When you have a season like this, sometimes the bad karma just kind of, it just kind of piles up. And even though you're trying to do the right thing and you're going to listen to your coach and you're going to attempt to execute correctly, whatever you do is just, it's going to be just not good enough. And I think that's what North Carolina fell into today, into that game, because whatever they did, it just wasn't going to be good enough. And they even had a nice comeback in overtime, and that wasn't even just good enough. So sometimes when you have that situation, they're just not, you can't get out of your own way. And Coach Williams will probably in a secret moment tell you the exact same thing. He's like, look, I tried to adjust and I tried to make the coaching change and I tried to coach my guys up to do the right thing, and we still got burned. It doesn't matter which way we do it. This season just has that type of vibe. Here's the other part that we need to take away from this. If we're going to look at NBA draft wise, and I know, I know, just work with me here, listeners. Okay. I'm not saying that Trey Jones is better than Cole Anthony and should get drafted ahead of him. But if we're going to look at this, if you want to draft a winning player, can't we just look at Trey Jones and look at Cole Anthony and be like, this guy wins games. This guy can win games. And I think we need to maybe take a closer look at this guy does win games versus the guy, this guy can win games. And maybe we should put a little bit more value on this guy does win games, like Fred VanVleet. He wins games, and look what he's doing for the Raptors now. He's undersized, very similar to Trey Jones. He didn't really have a discernible NBA skill, much like Jones. He's not a great shooter, doesn't have great length. Maybe, Jones does have the characteristic of being a great defender, so he does have that. But maybe we just need to pay attention to, these guys have a talent to win games. There's no metric. There's no efficiency number that we can attach to that. But maybe we should just put a little bit more attention on the guys that help win games. And you know who another guy is that helps win game? Okoro from Auburn. He had a box score that you might turn your eyes against. but that guy helps win games for Auburn, and that's why Auburn only has 2 losses. So maybe we need to pay a little closer attention to guys that help win games. Can that be a stat somewhere? Can that be a metric somewhere? Guys that help win games. Can we make that like an official stat somewhere, Mike? Is that possible?
Yeah, it's the clutch gene too. Derek Jeter made a career out of it in baseball. It's something either you have or you don't.
So, Mike, let's move on. Let's go to number 2, Gonzaga. They visited St. Mary's late night on Saturday and won 90-60. Stayed up late and watched this whole thing after coaching my daughter's, all girls game to a huge 47-11 win. It was very Gonzaga-like. P.S. We were minus my baller daughter, so she played on the boys team that night. They won 2, so we were 2-0 in some weird way. This is supposed to be a test for the Zags on the road. I picked Jordan Ford to be on an All-America team preseason. We mentioned that Fitz was playing his way like into an NBA draft second-round pick or something of that nature. And then the Bulldogs go and shoot 67% from the floor, 53% from 3. And here's how well they played. St. Mary's actually shot the ball more from the floor. They had 58 shots and Gonzaga had 53 shots. And they still got hosed by 30. This team can win the whole thing. The whole dang thing. There's no doubt in my mind. Where are you at with Gonzaga after this road performance and this really, really impressive performance against like a really talented St. Mary's team that has like 2 NBA-ish, we won't say NBA, we'll say NBA-ish players in Fitz and Ford and a really well-coached team in with Bennett. Where are you at with this Gonzaga team?
I mean, I can't get excited for Gonzaga winning in the WCC. I mean, I just can't. St. Mary's isn't good. Gonzaga's great. St. Mary's.
No, they didn't look good on Saturday.
Gonzaga's great. St. Mary's stinks. I mean, Malik Fitz is what we talked about last time. He has 12 points, 1 rebound, 0 assists. I mean, this is.
Can I jump in there? I know I want.
Let me guess. Gonzaga was so good defensively.
No. I went a little bananas with him and said NBA's player.
No, I think he's
interesting.
He's fine. He's
interesting.
He's fine. It's just, I don't think St. Mary's is a top 25 team in the country. So I think Gonzaga can win the whole thing. I think Gonzaga can win the whole thing. And this game did nothing to make me feel one way or another because St. Mary's, they're St. Mary's daddy.
Right.
That's what they were like. Pedro Martinez used to say. Vaunted St. Mary's new and improved defense. Okay. They're the new Coke. It's awful. They allow Gonzaga 73.2% from 2-point range. If you just isolated their 2-point shots, 73.2% at home, there's no defense. No one's playing defense if that happens. Pacific held Gonzaga to 60% at the Kennel. But I mean, the Oceans are tough to defend, so we gotta give it to Pacific. 5 guys in doubles. Beautiful basketball for Gonzaga. Will they stay undefeated in conference? Probably until February 22nd when I think they lose at BYU. But regardless, they're great. Jordan Ford, superb player, one-man gang. You nailed it early, like you did with Kobe McEwen, like you do with all these guys. He's tremendous. St. Mary's stinks. They've always stunk. They only won the one time I picked Gonzaga with Jock Landell. Outside of that, the big pillow, Tanner Krebs, enough. Great win for Gonzaga. Same old St. Mary's.
And I think Fitz had trouble with Gonzaga's length because anytime you're matched up with whether it be Timmy, Petrusev, or even Killian Tilly, like he's not 6'11", like the rest of those guys.
He'll kill Pacific though, man. He'll be on fire.
He will. He had a great game against BYU. So I was saying, all right.
Yes, he did, which is impressive.
Yeah,
that was good.
He did. He played well. All right. Normally, this would be the game that would lead our podcast. We have number 18. LSU falls just a point short at number 11, Auburn, 91-90. Normally, this would be the game of the weekend. This would be the thing that we were talking about. But this weekend, it's like almost an afterthought with all the activity that we've had on the college basketball landscape. Another OT affair, an outrageous floater by Javon McCormick with no time left, wins it for Auburn. They continue to have that winning DNA, that winning gene. Skylar Mays was kind of otherworldly for LSU. He had 30 points, 8 assists, 7 boards, 3 steals, 4 threes. Like I talked about with Okoro, he's for real. He helps teams win even when he has a bad game. This Auburn team, the squad, Mike, say what you want. All they do is just not lose often, ever. And Mike, the other thing I think we need to take away from this is both of these teams are like kind of sneaky Final Four teams. I know Auburn was there last year, and I know that LSU had the, FBI fog on them last year. Even losing Tremont Waters and Naz Reid, if you see one of these teams in that bracket, couldn't you like fabricate a way or a pathway that they could make a Final Four?
Definitely, either team, and this was even more impressive for Auburn because they did it without senior forward Daniel Purefoy. Had the flu, didn't play, had 4 consecutive games of 10 points or more in a row. So the guy I want to bring up, are we all aware of freshman Devin Cambridge? Okay. I have watched this guy now, and my wife and I watch South Carolina games, right? The kid was 6 of 9 from beyond the arc against South Carolina and was 7 of 10 from 3-point range and led the comeback against LSU. He doesn't get a lot of time. I don't know why, but I'm not doubting Bruce Pearl. He's a fantastic coach. But when he plays, Gus, he is absolutely one of the best 3-point shooters I've seen this year. He doesn't even hit the rim, man. Swishes are normal. I have seen both of those performances, and I'm sitting there going, who is this guy? And my wife's like, oh, this guy's probably the best player for them, right? Not really. Because he doesn't even start. 0. If Devin Cambridge, Gus, is open in the top corner, it's automatic. You cannot leave him. I'm telling you, I know this makes no sense. Watch the game, watch him shoot, thank me later. 3-way tie atop the SEC, LSU, Auburn, and now Kentucky, of course. Surprise, surprise. Yep. Auburn just finished, Gus, brutal stretch. They get this payback opportunity against Bama on Wednesday, who's struggling. No Herb Jones. They just pulled one out in overtime, but 10.6 rebounds per game. It's a big loss for them. Big loss on defense. He had wrist surgery. They want to have him back by March 1st. I think Auburn rolls Bama to get him back for the loss. Then they go to Missouri and Georgia, winnable games. Shorthanded Tennessee team, and then Kermit Davis at home before they go to Kentucky. Hell of a job by Bruce Pearl.
Yeah, this team is going to roll to like 25 wins before we know it. And we're going to look up and, we're going to, whatever they were on the bracket, they're like, I'm not kidding. They're going to be in line for a number 2 seed, which is like bananas after all of the talent that left. And Wiley is playing great inside. Okoro is playing unbelievable on the wing. And you brought up a great point. They did this without Purefoy. And Purefoy's been playing unbelievable on the wing for them as a secondary offensive initiator. He's been doing unbelievable things for them. So, the other thing that is really impressive with this Auburn team is they are still approaching the offensive outlook with, we're going to take a lot of threes. Even if we don't make a lot of threes, we're going to take a lot of threes, and we're going to dare you to beat us with that. And guess what? In the last couple of minutes and in overtime, that offensive mindset really paid off for them, and they were just cannon threes. And, of course, it was like capped by the McCormick runner, which was like totally awesome. The floater was really cool. All right, let's go to 16. Number 16, Michigan State falls to Michigan 77-68. I mean, what are we going to do with this Michigan State team? What are we going to do with this Michigan team? I can't make sense of either one of them. Michigan State is sitting at a 4 seed in the bracket preview show. Michigan was actually, you could have argued they could have been the number 1 ranked team in the country at one point this season earlier. And what are we going to do with both of these teams? I feel like both these teams are kind of an enigma status right now. Where are we at?
You remember in middle school when you used to come over and be my friend because like no one was sitting with me at lunch? Okay.
All right. Can I just say I'm still your friend?
Okay, well, thank God for that. But that's how I felt at the beginning of the year, because I remember saying at the beginning of the year, I'm like, I don't think Michigan State is that good, but I don't want to say this too loud because I'm wrong, okay? And then, Gabe Brown, Aaron Henry, Xavier Tillman, I'm like, these guys are not that good, okay? But every time I buried them, they bounced back, especially at Minnesota. They pounded Golden Gophers. Now, 3 losses in a row, 4 of the last 6, 16-8 overall. In the Big Ten, they're 8-5. Upcoming games, they go to an angry Illinois team, Maryland twice, and Penn State. I'm starting to doubt it here for Izzo and company. Listen, they'll get rolling, Gus, at the end of the year. They'll always finish strong. Maybe they'll at least make the Big Ten conference tournament or something. You know what I mean? But I think it's to make a Final Four, which is really what Michigan State judges, right? I think too much reliance on Cassius Winston, who can break down from time to time and gets hurt like he was last year. He's not a top athlete, not like a jump high, run fast guy, but he's a superior player. Here's the way I can sum it up. Gonzaga and Michigan State in the Elite Eight. Give me Gonzaga by 8.
Totally.
That's the way I love Izzo. I love Cassius Winston. He could be the player of the year. All of that is in play, but something's wrong. It's still Gabe Brown, Aaron Henry, and Xavier Tillman. That's my point.
You know what's going to happen is they're going to end up being a 7 seed like they were that one year.
Yes, very good.
And I mean, they made a run to the Final Four as a 7 seed that year, but is that team as good as this team? Like, I think that's a question you have to ask yourself right now, right?
And Gus, that's a good point. I've been saying to a lot of people recently that I think this year, remember 2012 when the two 15 seeds were upset? Right. We had Duke lose to Lehigh and Missouri lost to Norfolk State. I think the twos are going down. Right. So give me Michigan State as like a 7 seed, right? Win their game and then play a 15 seed in round 2 and we'll say, oh, he's back in the Sweet 16. That I could see happening.
That script sounds absolutely perfect. And I'll tell you right now, if we're going to talk 1 seeds and 2 seeds, if we're going to have 1 seeds that are going to be Gonzaga, San Diego State, possibly Dayton, and then you're going to have 2 seeds that could be Baylor, Kansas, Duke, I don't know, Auburn, like we mentioned earlier. Perhaps all of those teams have lost games this year to very ordinary squads. It's not like, maybe we can remove Dayton from that situation, and of course San Diego State because they haven't lost. Dayton's only lost in overtime. And San Diego State hasn't lost. And the one loss that Gonzaga had is back-to-back-to-back where they lost to Michigan, where they were a little bit run down. But everybody else has warts. Everybody else has oh man, not 1 wart, not 2 warts. And you just mentioned with Michigan State, they might have 6 or 7 warts. So yeah, that scenario that you just painted out could totally play out in the second round. And the scenario that, precedes that could play out in the first round, where we have another 1 seed losing, or a multiple 2 seeds losing, or a couple 3 seeds losing. I'm totally with you on that, Mike. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense for the season, and would follow the script for how this whole season has played out thus far. That would be like the perfect, I don't know, the perfect recipe, and I don't think anybody would shake their head of it and be like, oh man, I can't believe that. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. All right, speaking of Dayton, St. Louis gave number 6 Dayton a scare. And Dayton pulls out the win, 71-65. Mike, I think you kind of nailed why this was a little scary. I know that pace of play here was a factor, and I think that the St. Louis pace of play actually played effect here, and I think their defensive prowess here. But I think the same warts that bugs St. Louis, like you've mentioned before, came up to play here, but also some of their strengths came up. So why don't you talk about their warts and their strengths and why they kept it so close with Dayton?
Yeah, the line was a steal, man. 14 points, 14.5 points. It's ridiculous. St. Louis, this is their Super Bowl in essence, okay? So they have this sort of schematic matchup to at least keep this game close. That's all. Hassan French can limit Obi Toppin. Now, limit being defined as he had 17 points and 4 rebounds. Right. Okay, so I mean, 4 rebounds is really the limit. But no fouls for Obi Toppin, by the way, which again, I mean, the guy's a lottery pick, no doubt about it. Billikens held Dayton to just 5 of 17 from 3-point range. That's 29%. They're shooting 37% in the year. That's great defense. They have Rhodey home on Tuesday, which is going to be when this drops tonight. Right. So get your popcorn ready for that. The thing is, if you had $1 billion, Gus, what you should have done is bet $1 billion on Dayton on the money line, because there is absolutely no way that St. Louis can upset Dayton on the road if they can't make free throws. I mean, it's just a huge part. They were from the line. They were 10 of 16, which actually for St. Louis is
not
pretty
bad.
Good. Okay. 62%. But yeah, listen, I just think French is really solid college player. I don't think he's an NBA player, but I like him. But he can limit Toppin. And if you limit Toppin, you can hang around. And they hung around. They're not going to win, but 14 was too much.
And if you're going to also play great defense on the perimeter, on the 3-point line, which Dayton has really been reliant on, it has been hitting at a high rate with Crutcher and the gang and Landers and Mike Sell. If you're going to limit them to 29%, then you're kind of hanging around and you have to make your free throws late, which St. Louis doesn't usually do. Okay, Mike, we'll get back to this game later on the podcast, but how about Purdue finding a big win at Indiana, 74-62? And there's a couple of other elements that we'll get to a little bit later in the podcast. But, Mike, let's just talk game here. Purdue is one of the more perplexing teams, not just in the Big Ten, but in the nation. And I was a little bit higher on Indiana, but they've run into a little trouble here. So much trouble that, I think they're very bubblicious right now. And I think this actually paints the picture that you were talking about earlier, where we have, a zillion Big Ten teams in. Do we really want both of these teams in, or are either one of these teams dangerous moving forward? What do you think?
Well, yeah, Purdue's in now. They've played very well, better than I thought they would. Indiana's headed the wrong direction. Big win for Purdue. They keep the momentum off that Iowa destruction, 100 points at home. Indiana back down to earth. I think they were due to fall because they just don't have talent. Jackson Davis is really, really good, but he's only a freshman. Right. Okay. Justin Smith, Devontae Green, Rob Finney, Joey Brunk next. I mean, these are not like top Big Ten, top 4 team players. They're nice role players, and each one of them would be a great 4th or 5th guy, but it's mediocre upperclassmen. You can't even say that they're young. Those guys just aren't at the level of Michigan State and Maryland and Illinois and Michigan, and they're not that level. 15-8, 5-7 in conference, so they're going to need to rally to be NIT bound, which they should be. Jackson Davis should get them there. I just think it also says something about Michigan State, going back to what we said before, because they lost at Indiana. Yep. Purdue wins at Indiana, 74-62. That's a 12-point win. By the way, they've owned Indiana. I think they got 6 straight wins over them in regular season. Yep. But yeah, I think Archie Miller's doing a great job. I do. I just think they're not that talented in comparison to the other Big Ten teams. So nice win for Purdue.
I agree. Texas Tech wins on the road at Texas, 62-57. This is a win that Texas needed, didn't grab. Where are you at with Texas Tech? Are we thinking like they are kind of back in the mix? Do you feel like they're a threat? I mean, I love Jameis Ramsey. He's been unbelievable like the past 6-7 games. You could argue that he's the best player on the court. You could argue that he's one of the best players inside the Big 12. Where are you at with Texas Tech? Do you think that maybe they could revisit the success that they've had, maybe not last year, but previous years, where there's going to be a threat to move on in the tournament? Where are you at with them?
A lot of people on social media are pushing the Texas Tech future narrative. So, folks, when you talk about future, talking about winning the national title, people love Tech. Chris Beard, Ramsey, Davide Moretti, guys, they don't have anything in the middle. It's a good win. Right. It was a late cover, by the way. It was 3.5. They hit a bucket late. They're still nebulous for me. They're 15-8, isn't everybody? 6-4 as of this pod. Very lower round seed in the tournament that no one wants to play. They're going to get in the tournament. They're going to be a pain in the ass. No one wants to see them. I agree with that. Do I think they're making the Elite Eight? No, I don't see that. Young team, only 290th in experience per Ken Palm, only 1.34 years on average per player of experience. So that's going to hurt them as well. It's a young team with a great coach and nobody in the middle. It's tough. Jamias Ramsey, by the way, fantastic. 14-22 from 3-point range last 4 games. That's 64% from 3-point range last 4 games. Think that through. Davide Moretti got it going again from 3. He was terrible to start the year. He's up to 38.6 after a slow start. He was 45.9% last year, by the way, which is nuts. And they need him because they're weak inside with just TJ Holyfield. So good win, but I'm not ready to jump on the future bet for Texas Tech.
I think they're interesting because they do have Ramsey. They do have Holyfield, like you mentioned. They have Clark, who is also a grad transfer. And Moretti obviously adds some experience from the previous year. So I think if they can get some decent point guard play, I know Clark has been initiating a whole bunch of offense for them recently, from the forward position. I think they're interesting, but I agree, without the traditional big that's going to do something on the inside, whether it be get an easy bucket, an offensive rebound, and a defensive possession with a defensive rebound, or end a defensive possession with a block shot or an altered shot, I think that goes a little bit out of character for Texas Tech and their defensive profile. And I think if they don't have that one player that can kind of do that with some regularity, I think they're relying a little too much on their perimeter defense. And I think if they're going to rely a little too much on their perimeter defense, then I think that's going to affect them on the offensive end. So I'm kind of with you on the nebulous status for Texas Tech.
By the way, just to point out, people are going to be all over us because Texas Tech's beating TCU by 40 right now with 5 minutes left.
Are you serious?
77-37, yeah. It doesn't change my mind because it's a home game, nice, but still, I get it. I don't know, I may look to fade Texas Tech soon. I think we're getting a little too nuts with a young team.
Okay, fair enough. All right, how about let's talk a little Pac-12. Stanford falls on the road at number 24, Colorado, 81-74. So I guess the question here is, could one of these Pac-12 teams beat a number 1 seed coming in from the 8-9 game? Because I feel like that's where Colorado or Stanford might be heading. I mean, I know Colorado has beaten Dayton already, and we talked about how that's going to be, one of their calling cards as far as a seeding process goes. But I'm not sure Stanford is up to the task. Do you think either one of these teams are a threat coming in March if they have that big opportunity to beat a 1 or 2 seed, if they're seeded in that area of 8-9 or 7-10?
not a Stanford guy at all. De Silva now hurt. We have to see his status.
Right.
Stanford was 15-2, 4-0 in conference. They're now 16-7, 5-5 in conference. How does that happen, folks? Well, you lose 5 of 6. That's what you do. That's going to make me concerned. Colorado, listen, guys, you can get going again. I mean, this game was a little too close for comfort. Coming off a home game that was a little too close for comfort against Cal. No offense to Matt Bradley. I mean, at some point you got to get rolling here, guys. So Colorado, 19-5, 8-3, absolutely great. It's got the win over Oregon. That's good. Road loss to UCLA, odd. Road loss to Arizona, you can take it. Home loss to Oregon State, terrible. But, I don't believe in Stanford, and I'm starting to say Colorado, did we peak? Because, you got show me the win in Oregon, which I don't think they're going to get, but show me the win in Oregon on Thursday. That'll impress me, but I think that's an Oregon win. Right now, KenPom has it at 3. Give me Oregon all day. I think Oregon's going to pay him back on home, but let's see. Listen, they have all the pieces. Good coach, McKinley Wright, Batty inside, Bayes the Sean Marion of the group. Yeah. I get it. Okay, fine. But they should have blown one of those teams out. Cal or Stanford? Really? Yeah,
I like the topographical reference that you made there. Did they peak? I'm with you on that.
Very good. You're smarter than me. Very good.
Done,
yes.
Well done. All right, let's go. Listen, we got to go off topic a tiny bit here and go off the map a little bit. Hey, Mike, Belmont holds off Austin Peay 71-63. Adam Kunkel, sophomore guard, who's averaging 17 points a game, and he's shooting 44% from 3. He continues his efficient season with 19 more points and 5 more dimes, and he helps hold off the unbelievably scalding Terry Taylor from Austin Peay. Listen to this line. He went for 23 points and 23 rebounds against Belmont. That is outrageous. I mean, he's probably going to win player of the conference, I would imagine. I don't know why he wouldn't, because he's playing at an unbelievable efficient level. Belmont needed this win, and they needed this win to keep pace inside the Ohio Valley. Murray State sits atop the conference at 11-1. Austin Peay is now 10-2. Belmont is now 9-3, tied with Eastern Kentucky. And oh, by the way, you know who the only loss that Murray State took in the Ohio Valley is? That's right, it's to Belmont. So this Ohio Valley is crazy as well, just like the rest of college basketball. This is just bananas, right?
Yeah, Murray State, like you said, it's got a game on Austin Peay. Belmont State in it. Kunkel's really good.
He's good.
Kunkel is good, really good. Yeah. Nice job by Casey Alexander. First year coaching, by the way. Excellent job by him. Murray State and Peay got to play twice coming up, so that's going to be interesting. I like Scary Terry. I'm with you on that. Good game. Ohio Valley. A lot of fun. Early conference tournament. I can't wait. Absolutely. Agree with everything you said.
It's going to be great. Okay. Let's finish off the weekend preview with number 12 Seton Hall going to number 10 Villanova and gathering a 70-64 win. Tell me where I'm crazy here. I know where you're going to jump in. Listeners, this is like my Seton Hall platform. Ready? The more and more I see the Seton Hall team, the more and more I think they have all the parts. They have a legit stud in Powell, who's fearless. He's Jersey tough. They have a playmaking 4 in Sandro. The lefty can create off the dribble and shoot a little bit. They have a legit college point guard, McKnight, who values the ball and is a pain in the butt on defense. They have a shot eraser and game-changing big in Gill inside. And they have a guy who's starting to figure it out, Jared Rhoden, who's very Dante DiVincenzo-like. He's getting better and better each game. If you remember, Dante got better and better for Villanova during that title run and then turned himself into an NBA first-round pick. It seems like Jaron Rhoden is doing a couple of the things that Dante DiVincenzo did for that Villanova team that won a title. Now, let's not get crazy here. I'm not saying Seton Hall is going to win the title. What I am saying is they do seem to have all the parts. The only fishy part is what, Mike? Go ahead.
No, I'm okay with it. I don't like Willard. I think Willard is questionable, but we've seen it before, Gus, with coaches that I don't necessarily like when everyone buys in.
Right.
I've been saying it all year, but if you go back and you did a search on the number of times I mentioned Kevin Willard this year versus last year, it's like night and day.
True.
I still don't think Kevin Willard is a great coach, but I absolutely think they buy in. I think he does a good job on defense. This team is one of the best defensive teams in the country. They have a great star. Everyone likes him. No. Barry Switzer won a title with the Cowboys. I mean, just keep this in mind. So I am not going to poo-poo anything you're saying. I think they're a legit Final Four team. Absolutely. Especially this year. Because a lot of these teams at the top, are we sure their coaches are good? Are we sure Brian Dutcher is a better coach than Kevin Willard? Are we sure about that? I don't know. Maybe he is, but I don't know that. We know Krzyzewski is. We know Self is. We know Few is. I get it. But there's not that many of those guys. So, I mean, like, if you want to say, is Willard worse than Fran McCaffrey? I mean, can Iowa make a Sweet 16? So yeah, I'm on board with Seton Hall. Powell's great. Gill's great. McKnight came back. Thank God. That would have been a disastrous injury. Right. But absolutely, I'm with you. I'm with you. I have no problem with it.
And since Valentine's Day is around the corner, the perfect place to end with the weekend rundown is Nate Darling. The Blue Hens finished off my JMU Dukes. Darling hit for 27 points and continues his stellar season and hit the game winner with 2 seconds left in a tie game situation. Darling hit 4 of 9 from 3. That's 6 straight wins for the Blue Hens, and they are top the CAA, which is just as nutty as the Ohio Valley. Hofstra is 9-3. College Charleston is 9-4. Delaware sits at 8-4. The Tribe is sitting at 8-5. Hunting. Nate Darling. Mike, do you have any other go-to names for those that you love, like Darling or Sweetheart or anything like that?
Yeah, I love Javon Freeman Liberty of Valpo. I think the guy does it all, and he's been single-handedly bringing Valpo back for these incredible covers, last minute. So I've tied into the gambling. He was great against Loyola Chicago. Yes, Javon Freeman Liberty is my guy. I like the hyphenated name.
Of course, the hyphenated name. All right, let's get to some of the bigger picture things that we've kind of skipped on or waited on. Indiana had Coach Knight revisit campus and come on court with a number of his former players. He had an awkward moment with Dick Vitale on the sidelines. You could see that people were out with their phones in the crowd. People were applauding. Some people were teary. Some people were emotional. Coach Knight was emotional. I think we have opinions on both sides here, so I'll open the floor to you first, and then I'll jump in with my 2 cents. What did you take away from the Indiana Coach Knight reunite? Do you think it was good for college basketball? Do you think it was good for Indiana? I mean, obviously, this is like a jersey retirement situation where you have this halftime, really emotional situation, and the game gets kind of lost, and I think that's maybe what happened for Indiana against Purdue. Where are you at with Coach Knight maybe attempting to mend fences with the place that he swore that he was never going to revisit and had won 3 national championships and been to 5 Final Fours with? Do you think it's a good thing for college basketball, or do you think that maybe it should have just been left alone?
No, I don't understand the counter argument. I think it's a great thing for college basketball. Right. It was one of the coolest things I saw. By the way, having talked to a lot of people who have had parents that have suffered from Parkinson's and some other deadly, really tough late in life diseases, I think the exchange between him and Vitale was real. I think that when people get older, they struggle with social cues, and I put it on Twitter. I think it was real, but then I thought he was just legitimately angry. But then when I talked to some other people who have had parents, they said, no, it's real. It's not real because he's angry. It's real because, literally, like when you're dealing with an aging parent like that, you have to say, I'm going to touch your head now. I'm going to touch your shoulder, because they're going to react like you're trying to hurt them.
Correct.
So it was kind of sad, and I felt badly for Knight. I mean, he was able to smooth it out, and he said, let's go Indiana defense, and it worked out. It's a great moment. He's a wonderful coach, Hall of Fame coach. You get 3, Gus, is different. 1, okay. 2 is good. 3 is crazy. You get 3, that's a different level. That, to me, puts you a different echelon. It's one of the best coaches I've ever seen in my life. From the comment you get, and it was at 87, get me to the Final Four and I'll win it for you, is what he said, and he was right when Smart hit the shot against Syracuse. So, yeah, I was really happy. Wonderful moment. Glad he made amends. It happens. It happens to everyone. Players get, and the pros get let go and they get mad at the team. Knight was fired. He got mad. But you know what? Legendary coach comes back, and all his players there, Isaiah Thomas, everybody. It's a great job.
Here's what I think this whole storyline followed. I think it followed one of Bill Shakespeare's, one of his go-to equations that he used, and what makes his writing and his plays and his poetry and his sonnets still college level classes today. It's pretty simple. Drama plus time equals comedy. Like the drama that Bob Knight created with his actions and with his words needed time. And that time didn't necessarily create a comedy, but it did create goodwill. And I think that the goodwill that will be moving forward with Indiana and Bob Knight will be another game that he attends, will be another game that he's applauded by the fans, will be another opportunity for him to embrace the place that loves him, that respects him, that admires him. And without that time that was, that took place, I think this would still be a really raw moment. And you saw parts of that raw moment. You mentioned parts of that raw moment with Dick Vitale. And, my grandfather suffered from a very similar disease. And I had to go through a very similar chain of commands when each time communicating with him, coming back from college, each time I came back from vacation from college, it just got worse and worse. And I had to take more and more precautionary measures when communicating with him, even though he was my guy. Like, he's my guy that helped raise me, and I trusted him and he trusted me. Like, I get that part and I understand why that happens. And you could see, seeing that firsthand between Knight and Dick Vitale, it made sense to me. I get why it happened. It wasn't like an awkward moment for me. It was just real. Like, that's what really happens when your body breaks down and a disease takes over. So as a communicator and as somebody that loves that person, you have to make sure that you're being the person that is taking care of that person. It's like, it's like any family dynamic. Like the roles shift. Like, Coach Knight had all of his players that he took such good care of and cared for and looked out for and did the best that he could for. And now the roles shift. Now all of those players are looking out for Coach Knight. The relationship just shifts. So I'm happy that they're all there in place so that relationship can continue, and maybe the relationship with Indiana on the whole can benefit from that relationship shift. When somebody grows to that age and has some of those problems and then has enough people that care for him that can be in place to make sure that he's safe and cared for and properly taken care of. So I think that's kind of cool. And like you mentioned, and just go coach-wise, you mentioned 3 championships. That's bananas. That's crazy. 5 Final Fours. That's also great. It's unbelievable. And then I think if we just go a little bit further, would his coaching style work now? No way. Not a chance. But that doesn't mean that his coaching style wasn't successful. It doesn't mean his coaching style wasn't efficient. Would it be accepted now? No. And was it accepted at the end of his tenure? No, absolutely not. And that's why, the relationship between him and Indiana came to such a sour ending. So I'm glad that even after that sour ending, we're able to have a little, reconnect here. And I bet the next reconnect is going to be a little bit smoother. And the next one after that is going to be a little bit more applause. And I think that he'll be a little bit more gracious about it. So, to be honest, as college basketball fans, it's really cool. It's a really cool moment for Indiana. It's a really cool moment for Bob Knight. And I think you could say a whole bunch of nasty things about him because he did verbalize some really awful things about the people at Indiana and actually, put his actions into play that were kind of awful and reprehensible. How about we all get on the healing side and we try to find a happy medium? I think this past Saturday was one of those things. And I think it's an interesting, pivot point here where we're going to talk about a couple more things. Mike, I don't know if Coach Knight would necessarily agree with what, the actions of Xavier Simpson from Michigan and maybe the bravery and the openness of DJ Carton of Ohio State. I think those things might have been, I don't know, Coach Knight might have said those things are signs of weakness. Maybe those things are things that you would, turn into the NCAA. Maybe those things are things that you would call out that particular player for as a sign of like, I don't want this player on my team. But I think both, we're talking about two different things here with Xavier Simpson with his car crash and DJ Carton with his admission for, problems with mental health. Why don't we take Xavier Simpson first, and then we'll go to DJ Carton. Where are you at with Michigan and what they should do with Xavier Simpson? Do you think there'll be anything more of this, or do you think the 1-game suspension is going to be enough and that's going to be it?
No, I think 1 game's fine. Obviously he crashed the car, the AD, and lied about it, which I think was the issue. I don't think he was even the crashing. I don't think he was under the influence or anything. I think he just was reckless.
Right.
I think Knight would be fine with both. I think he doesn't like the lying. I think the crashing of the car obviously is old school. But here's the thing. I don't take people who existed in a different era and then place them in this era. Because if Bobby Knight was coaching and coached the majority of his years in this time when mental health is such at the forefront and so important, and we're starting to realize how complex it is, he wouldn't be doing that. Because back in their day, everyone poo-pooed it. Well, back in their day, when someone had Tourette's syndrome, they tied him to a table. So the time in which you grow up sort of skews your mind. Right. If Bobby Knight grew up today, I think he would be champion mental health, because I think he would have learned more about it. It would have been more prevalent. He would have seen more athletes with it. He probably would have hired somebody to deal with it. So I think he handles both situations fine. I think he has a little less tolerance for Simpson because it was really an act of carelessness than more of a problem. But no, I think the 1 game is fine for Simpson. I'm fine with it. And if they're okay with it, I don't want to get into judging, how, I don't know the whole story, right. But if Michigan's okay with 1 game, I'm fine with it. The DJ Carton thing, I just hope he gets help. I hope he comes back. I hope he's mentally right as a person. And I think Knight would have handled them in fairly better ways, just because it's like saying Michael Jordan can't go against LeBron James because LeBron James is so much bigger than him. Right. But if Michael Jordan was in middle school now, when everyone's talking about weightlifting and working out, Michael Jordan would have been bigger than the wiry kid that he was. It's just at the time that was seen as the preferred athlete. Michael Jordan wouldn't grow up in LeBron James's era and not be jacked. Like, he would have been dominant with that. Correct. Because he would have those resources.
Right. And I think with the DJ Carton thing, I think the openness and the bravery from Carton's part as far as admitting a weakness, I think there's something admirable about admitting, I'm not right. I'm not set. I'm not 100% here. And I'm going to try to better myself. And to better myself, I have to take away something that I really love and take away part of a framework that has really helped me throughout my lifetime, being a basketball team. And in this case, the Ohio State basketball team. So I think that's a really interesting decision. And I think it's a really brave decision because, as you know, we talk about on the podcast a lot how you and I are former Division I college athletes, and I'll tell you right now, I leaned on my teammates every day. Like, whether it be like what the heck do I do with this class? This workout is going to be like intense and insane. Like, what am I going to, or my girlfriend is like bugging me or whatnot. Like, so not having that support system would be a little scary for me, especially because a lot of those guys are guys that I still talk to this very day. And I know that you're the same way. So I think that it's a really brave thing by Carton to say, like, I'm going to step away from something that is a really strong support system for me and something that I can rely on and would be really positive for me because I am that, I'm that in deficit. So that's a little scary for me. If I were Carton and I had, some sort of similar situation, like, I would almost want to like lean in to my teammates and lean in to that structure and say, like, I'm going to really, really embrace what I have here and what I can trust. So the fact that he's stepping away from it, I think, is really brave. And I think it really speaks to, how deep his problems might be and maybe how much help he might need. And Mike, last thing, we'll end on like a little positive note here. How about Hank Gathers and his statue for Loyola Marymount? How cool is that? I mean, you and I are, we'll lift the curtain here a little bit. We're old enough to remember Hank Gathers playing and seeing Hank Gathers playing. And we remember like how great that Loyola Marymount team was and how amazing that run was to the Elite Eight. And, it's not crazy. They could have won the whole darn thing. how cool is it that Hank Gathers is going to have a statue?
I love the Hank Gathers statue. He was one of the best college players I've ever seen. That Loyola Marymount team was special with Paul Westhead and the 6 seconds and get it up. Bo Kimball, a tragedy that happened with Hank Gathers, but that team made a run to the Elite Eight after his collapse on the court. Bo Kimball with the left-handed foul shot in his honor that he made. Love it, because Hank Gathers was a great player, but he symbolized a lot more than that for the team, for everything that happened, and I think it's a really nice thing that they're doing.
Yeah, and for our listeners that are a little bit younger, it's worth going back and watching a few Hank Gathers highlights, maybe a little Loyola Marymount highlight, Bo Kimball highlight. That team was special. Gathers was a really special undersized 4. And then you mentioned Bo Kimball. Bo Kimball was this kind of like do-everything guard that had a great NBA career, and he made an unbelievable tribute to his teammate, friend, and brother, Hank Gathers, by shooting free throws lefty and making it. It was an unbelievably emotional moment for anybody that was watching that tournament game. Oh, man, I remember it was like, it was like not yesterday, but at least a couple of weeks ago. And I know it's been forever. And man, that team was super fun, and Hank Gathers was awesome. He was just awesome. And Bo Kimball was like one of these breakneck guards that did everything. And you mentioned Coach Westhead that kind of let them do everything on offense. So they're super fun to watch. Let's end the podcast with our 6-pack of games that, listeners can look forward to later on this week. You give us your Action Network 2 cents on what we're looking for. And please, if you like what you're listening to, please don't forget to give the podcast a follow at SDS Podcast, Efficiency of Keystrokes, of course, on Twitter. Please don't forget to give Mike a follow at Randall Rant. He is insightful, educational, and entertaining, all in one nice, tidy little package. And please, if you really like what you're listening to, don't forget to give the podcast a follow and a subscription on your podcast consumption vehicle of choice, and leave a nice review for us. We're trying to pump out some good content for you as we get closer to March Madness. So, kindness is always cool. So spread some kindness and leave a nice review. 6-pack of games starts on Thursday. Previously, you mentioned Colorado at Oregon. You gave us a little teaser on this earlier. What do you think with Colorado, who had defeated Dayton, at Oregon, who got a 4 seed in the Bracket Preview Show?
Yeah, Oregon's been a little shaky here. Back-to-back losses to Stanford and Oregon State. Not good. But I do like him at home here to get right against Colorado. Ken Pom has it at 3. I would easily give the 3 points. Peyton Pritchard can't get in foul trouble because their bigs inside are all nebulous. None of them are really great. They need Pritchard on the court. If Pritchard stays out of foul trouble and plays, majority 34 minutes, 35 minutes, whatever he plays, I think they're going to win. They're going to win handily. So I like Oregon.
I think I like Pritchard. If I were going to do it like an equation here, I would say Pritchard greater than Wright McKinley. So I would also take Oregon, especially at home with all those trees on the court. Let's hit Friday. We got the Ivy. We got Yale at Princeton. I saw how Princeton played at home. We saw how Yale lost that game to Harvard. What are you going to do with Yale and Princeton on Friday night?
Right now it's Yale favored. Okay. Yale can't be favored on the road against Princeton. They just can't do it. So far Princeton has played Penn twice and beaten them both times, home and away. They beat Dartmouth home substantially by 22. They beat Harvard home, impressive win, the game you went to. They lost at Cornell, then they came back and beat Columbia and covered, by the way. So I'm going to take the points with Princeton. Didn't like what I saw against Yale. Listen, Yale crushes everybody but Harvard. So if this game was at Yale, maybe I'd feel differently. But I'm going to take Princeton with the points. If you give me 5 or 6 points at home with Princeton, no problem.
I'll tell you right now, we were sitting down on Princeton's side in the second half. They can shoot the ball. So if Yale is not going to defend on the perimeter, I'll tell you right now, Princeton's going to make double-digit threes. And, Llewellyn, the little crafty point guard, he creates enough in the lane where he's going to create some offensive opportunities with some putbacks and some offensive rebounds. I kind of like what he does. And I think that Princeton shoots it well enough here against Yale to keep it close. I'm kind of with you on that. Let's go to Saturday. Let's go West Virginia at the number 1 team in the country, Baylor. Mike, Does West Virginia have a bounce-back performance here after losing to Oklahoma? Does Baylor finally lose? What do you feel like here in the Big 12?
West Virginia doesn't have a backcourt. They're just big inside, and they play well in rebound, so they'll probably stay in the game. But they played at Kansas, lost by 7. They played at Kansas State, they lost by 14. They played at Texas Tech, they lost by 8. They played at Oklahoma, they lost by 10. They're playing Kansas at home on Wednesday, whereas Baylor, who just won, by the way, and covered by a half point against Texas, is going to have the rest of the week off to prepare for this game. So I don't see how I can take West Virginia. They're going to have to focus against Kansas. That's going to be an extremely tough game. Then they have a short turnaround. They have to go on the road to Baylor, who has 5 days to rest up. And by the way, West Virginia hasn't really done well on the road in the Big 12 this year. So I'm going to roll with Baylor.
I'm rolling with you as well. I think that's a great call. And I think the layout that you gave there makes perfect sense. And I think Baylor at home is like a really interesting animal. And maybe this is the game that Clark kind of gets things rolling on the inside and can battle some of those West Virginia bigs. And we know how we feel about Baylor's backcourt. I think Butler is definitely the best backcourt player there. So if he's going to be the best player on the court, I love Baylor there. Saturday, we're going to go Maryland at Michigan State. Maryland got a big road win at Illinois. Are they going to carry that over to Michigan State? Is Michigan State in trouble here? What do we got here inside the Big Ten?
Maryland's going to have to go to Michigan State. Mm-hmm. Now, Michigan State's going to have their back against the wall. It's, I mean, we went from 2 weeks ago, or at least I did, from questioning Maryland on the road, and now all of a sudden they're just simply going to keep rolling on the road here as they go to Michigan State. They've won at Northwestern, okay. They've won at Indiana by 1, and they won at Illinois, good win. Are we really at the point where we trust Turgeon for 4 consecutive road wins, including maybe the toughest place to play in conference? I'm not there yet. Okay. Right now it's Michigan State -3. I'll probably give that. And again, I have a lot of questions about Michigan State, but I have questions about Maryland also. And listen, the book on the Big Ten earlier in the year, remember that? Was home teams were dominating. Definitely. So, Maryland can lose this game and still have a really good season. Michigan State's going to need this win badly. Right now they have 3 consecutive losses, and tomorrow or tonight rather they have Illinois. I mean, are they going to lose that game and lose 4 in a row and then lose 5 in a row at home to Mark Turgeon? I'll take Michigan State.
I'm kind of with you there. I think the one thing to pay attention to here is, actually I got 2 things for you. Number 1, does Jalen Smith continue to dominate the conference? Because right now he's playing like the conference player of the year. And then number 2, who's going to win the point guard battle? Because this is definitely the 2 best point guards in the nation, not in the nation, inside the conference with Cowan and Winston. So who gets the upper hand there? I think if Smith continues to play out of his head and goes for 20 and 10 and 3 blocks, then we're talking a Maryland win. And especially if Cowan can at least match or maybe outduel Winston, then I think we're looking at a Maryland win on the road. But I'm with you. I might, if I were you, if I were a listener, I might lean the home team here and maybe play the desperation card for Michigan State. All right, Mike, Sunday, San Diego State is at Boise State. We got to mention this Boise State comeback that they had against Utah State was kind of bananas. They were down 18 with 3 minutes to go, and they came back and won that game in overtime. And they won that game in overtime without Derek Alston Jr. from Boise State. He's an NBA talent. He's averaging about 19.5 points a game, about 5 boards, about 3 assists. He's shooting 37% from 3. The 6'9" junior is legit. I mean, I know I've been in love with talking about NBA players, but he's an NBA player. He's got the length and the size and the stats to do that. They had that comeback against Utah State with him on the bench. So, Mike, is this the spot where San Diego State loses at Boise State? Is this the thing that maybe trips them up from their undefeated season? Is this the hang-up?
It could be. They're probably going to be giving 7, 8, or 9.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right. 7.5 or 8. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take those points. I like Boise State. I think Boise, like you said, has played very well at home. They have the size inside to match up. Alston can step out and shoot threes. He's still very raw. I just see a lot of potential in him.
Agreed.
It could be, because I don't think they're losing at home to New Mexico. Then they go to Boise. Then they host UNLV at home, who they beat on the road. Then they host Colorado State, who's an upstart team, but are they really going to stop an undefeated streak with two freshman backcourt? I don't know about that. Not yet. And then they go away at Nevada. You know my feelings on that. So I think that Boise State...
Little shout to Jalen Harris in Nevada. He's playing out of his head. He's had multiple 30-point games.
He's playing out of his mind. He's playing out of his mind, absolutely.
Yeah.
But he's going to have to do that and then some, and hopefully they'll get Jazz Johnson back just to make the game better. And Alford is a better coach than I think Musselman, at least X's and O's wise, so maybe he'll dial something up. But yeah, I would take the points with Boise. I would. Am I right to say they're going to lose? No. Because I got through the gauntlet I said they had to get through. UNLV, New Mexico, Utah State Air Force, check, and they're not even close, those games. UNLV, they hit a 3 at the buzzer, so it looks like it's closer than it was. It was 4. But yeah, I don't think they're going to win, but yeah, I'll take Boise in the points.
Yeah, I think I'd lean that way too. I think that makes sense. And I think San Diego State is due for a hiccup here, and maybe that's the one hiccup that they run into. I don't think this is going to be like a Gonzaga St. Mary situation where they come in and win by 30. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than that. And we'll end our 6-pack with a very bubblicious matchup in the Big Ten. How about Indiana at Michigan? Mike, is there any way that Indiana can get this road win against Michigan if Xavier Zinsson plays?
Yeah, Xavier, he's back. He's playing. I think they can get it. They're going to need it. Indiana, right. I think Michigan's going to get it. I'm confident in that. I don't see Indiana going on the road. Absolutely not. So I'm a little concerned here about Michigan. Like I said, they've lost. I mean, gosh, that was a 5-game losing streak, and then they lose at home to Ohio State. And I had a feeling about that game because it just was fishy to me. So they got to get going, but they do have a lot of weapons. They shoot the 3 well, Teskey inside. I think they have enough to get through Indiana there, but it bears watching. I don't think they're going to run big and win the Big Ten tournament, put it that way.
I think if Livers is back healthy, we talked about Johns playing really well, and if Teskey can continue his kind of impact on both ends of the floor where he's going to, defer a couple of shots and then, make a couple of putbacks. And if Simpson's going to continue to play at like a decent level at the point guard position, I think that makes sense for me. I think that gives me enough hope for Michigan at home. We've made it through another podcast. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the listeners out there besides Happy Valentine's Day?
No, very good, man. Some great games coming up down the stretch. Very excited.
All right, listeners, make sure you give a hug, a high five, or a fist bump to somebody that you love during this Valentine's Day weekend. And trust me on this one, Mike and I will catch up with you before you know it with some special goodies along the way to get you ready for March Madness. So we're just going to say cilantro, grazie, arigato, cheers.
I'm addicted to the appetite.